All right, thank you very much, Ms. Russo. Appreciate it. President Trump signs a $400 billion spending deal to end the government shutdown.
All right, our political analyst Wendy Patrick, Laura Fink, they join us now with This Week in Politics. Ladies, good morning. Welcome back.
Good morning, Shelley.
All right, second time in a matter of weeks the government has shut down.
Yeah.
They're blaming each other. One party saying it's their fault, one party saying it's theirs. Whose fault is this? What is going on?
Well, I hate to go back to it, but the Republicans control the White House and both branches of Congress. And we see that the market instability is connected to the instability in all three of those branches. The problem is we are not funding basic functions of government, and we're making certain things a political football. So we did see some agreement. Nobody won last night. Nobody was particularly happy, but hopefully the American people can have a little bit more confidence that their government will be funded at least until the end of March.
I'm going to blame it on Rand Paul because he's the guy that kept
Republican
talking.
senator's the one who kind of threw a wrench into that whole thing.
He kept talking well into the night, much to the chagrin of many of the Democrats as well as many of his fellow Republicans, making some of the objections that didn't sway enough of his party to make a difference one way or another. But thank goodness that while most of the viewers, probably not us, we were probably already up, but while most people slept overnight, the government shut down and then reopened, so nobody lost their job this morning.
So this is funded until when now? Until the end of March? Is that
That's
what
right.
the deal is? And then what happens? Is this the old kicking the can down the road that everybody likes to say?
Yeah,
so what happens at the end of March now?
Yeah, we're kicking that can. Well, a couple things. I mean, we just heard talk about Nancy Pelosi in 4-inch heels, standing up for dreamers in those heels for 8 hours on the floor of the House at 70.
There's no DACA deal in this.
No DACA deal. There's no DACA deal. There's no infrastructure funding. All of the things beyond the basic funding of government are not getting done. And so the question is, how are voters going to respond to that? Because we're coming up on election season. So in some ways, we've kicked the can down the road a little bit with the government funding. We'll see that again in March. But the debt ceiling, they were able to raise essentially our nation's credit limit until 2019. So that takes that issue off the table for election season. But there are still all of these bread and butter issues. You know, with the stock market down, with the economy potentially overheating, we may see, you know, the price of basic things like gasoline, like milk go up. That's bad for our pocketbooks, and it's something that the government's going to have to confront.
This is what I call the kitchen table test. These are the issues that Americans care about. They care about health care, national security, the cost of milk and gas, and the things that as a practical reality matter the most to most of us. What we seem to be focusing on, we focus on a lot of drama. There's an awful lot of sound bites and tweets that we spend a lot of time talking about. But when it really comes down to it, we care more about how is the spending bill going to affect us day to day.
You talk about the drama. You just brought it up about Nancy Pelosi. Impressive. What, 8 hours?
8 hours.
77 years old. In heels.
In heels.
No, my 4-inchers don't last that long.
But would some find this to be just too much, like kind of just annoying, like enough?
Well, those were that was what Rand Paul was accused of last night when he continued to talk, knowing that his arguments were not swaying his colleagues to change the vote one way or another. And that's the problem, is they're up all night arguing and voting, but what did we really get at the end of the day? And could it have been a result that might have taken maybe 11 hours less to achieve?
Okay, in terms of, did it accomplish anything? Because I know the filibuster didn't, ultimately the bill gets signed. What does that filibuster do in terms of what we can expect in late March? Is she going to do it again? Is somebody else going to do it again?
Well, the thing that
we're just to make a point.
Well, the thing we're not talking about is one of the major contributors to this problem is not just Republicans and Democrats not able to get along. We just passed a tax bill that isn't bringing in very much money because we cut taxes more than $2 trillion for corporations, and that means the money's not flowing into the government, which means we run into these lack of funding bills faster. And now this is an issue that, you know, Republicans campaigned on.
Yep.
We got a little buzz in the stock market for a little bit, but now we're having that caffeine crash because we're seeing that those basic bills of government are not being paid for, and that's something that the Republican leadership is going to have to address.
Wendy, I wanted to talk to you about Rob Porter resigned, White House staff secretary. He resigned. Essentially, there's accusations from 2 ex-wives about abuse. Does this have an impact on anything? Because we've seen a lot of changes going on. What is this going to do? What is the fallout here?
Well, the fallout is twofold. On the one hand, everybody's asking who knew what when. How did this man get so close to the president when he had all of this in his past? On the other hand, what I think it also does is raises the conversation that we continue to have about domestic violence and how it is the insidious, invisible epidemic that permeates all echelons of society. It's not confined to any particular group of people. You can't recognize an abuser. I understand these are allegations, we don't have convictions, but nonetheless, the conversation continues. So on both of those tracks, it's a conversation we ought to be having, is not only how do you vet people that should be working in the White House, but how do you vet partners? And that's really opened up two lines of discussion.
Well, and the two lines where they converge is that the White House finds it fine to employ domestic violence, people that have been accused of it. Now, Rob Porter was in charge of handling all the confidential information, all the classified information that crossed the president's desk. This is a high security risk, and we know that White House counsel Don McGahn knew, and we know that John Kelly, the chief of staff, knew. They knew that his clearance was not approved by the FBI. That's a huge problem, to go ahead and allow him to stay in that role without having that clearance. Now, that's just a basic personnel problem, and I think it mirrors what we've been seeing since the inception of the Trump presidency, with this chaos and confusion and the staff turnover and the lack of attention to these basic details. It's starting to catch up with them. We'll see what sort of changes they implement as a result.
This reminds me of the Roy Moore campaign, though. What the White House is basically saying is we didn't know, he denied it, there wasn't any proof beyond the allegations. Now the black eye picture comes out and now everybody changes their tune. So it's just another indicia of the fact that some of those people that work in the White House, they say they don't know enough to really make a judgment one way or another. Now I think they've all changed their tune overnight.
You have 30 seconds to give us your final thoughts before we let you go on this Friday. Laura, we'll start with you.
Well, speaking of the pocketbook issues, we saw a tweet that Paul Ryan retweeted of an education secretary in Pennsylvania, and she was excited about $1.50 she was going to get in her paycheck every week as a result of the tax cut. And then she was celebrating because she thought after the end of the year, I might be able to pay for my Costco membership. And Paul Ryan retweeted this, of course, was pilloried for it, and because it shows average Americans are not getting the result of the tax cut. It was a big corporate benefit, big benefit to people that were wealthy, but ordinary Americans are not feeling that. Now, they may be able to sell it and spin it now, but at election time, we know that that's going to come back to haunt them. So a harbinger of things to come.
All right, you got about 43 seconds there. That's
Oh,
okay.
Well, I had 12 last week.
You had your 12 from last week, so it carried over.
It carries over. It's okay.
Wait a minute, you guys are cutting into my time now.
No,
Okay.
we haven't even started your clock. 30 seconds on the board. Wendy,
Okay,
go.
well, I kind of like Laura's final thoughts. I didn't know what she was going to talk about, but I'm going to pick up on that because, one of the things that Nancy Pelosi said that really she took a lot of heat for was calling it crumbs, the savings to modern, ordinary Americans. Actually, not only is it a Costco membership, it's a phone bill, it's a car payment, it's an extra weekend off that you wouldn't otherwise be able to afford. All of that adds up, and even people that seem to have great jobs and great lives really can use that extra cash for themselves, for their kids, for college tuition. So I really think that I'm glad we're talking about this, but the kitchen table test also matters about what are we going to be able to spend. And I think as of the tax cut, we get a little bit more.
Okay, Wendy Patrick.
Just a teeny little
Did I go over? Oh, no.
Laura Fink. Yeah, it's iffy here and there. It doesn't matter. Thank you both. Have a wonderful
Thanks,
weekend.
Cheryl.
Thanks for
Thanks,
being here.
Earl. Thanks, Charlie.
All right, still ahead of the Fox 5 Morning News, the highest paid player in the NFL. You know who it is? It's a quarterback. It's not Tom Brady. We're going to tell you who signed a huge contract.
Plus, when an asteroid the size of a blue whale will fly past Earth. And Brad Wills.
And good morning, everybody. Coming up in a couple minutes here, how you can bling your favorite chicken wings. That's right, gold on your chicken wings. And your favorite pizza place. It's National Pizza Day. How you can